Are you happy with your life?
Yes.
That was rhetorical, Willie. Are you living the life that you want to live?
Yes.
Or are you living a life still trying to please someone else, maybe even someone who's no longer living? Do you feel disconnected from life? Your life is good for the most part, but you can't help but feel disconnected from the passion and excitement that others feel about their work and their lives. The deepest part of you knows it's possible, but you're not sure where to begin. Now, people often say, I'm living the life, when they have one of those moments where everything comes together and life is exactly how they imagined it could be. I'm living the life. What image pops in your head when you think about I'm living the life? Is it based on a certain life event happening? Is it having a certain amount of money in your bank account? Or is it a moment when the world seems to align and you feel at peace? We wish for the day when we finally figure things out and we're living the life. Friends, here's the thing. You'll always be figuring it out. Your life is in front of you right now, and it's time to live it well today, even if it's not what you thought it would be. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to explore a way to approach life that's surprisingly freeing. 4 steps, 4 sermons, and they are: today, show up. Next week, pay attention. 3 weeks or 2 weeks from today, cooperate with God. And the last, release the outcome. My daughter, Jenny, grew up in this church. She is now a United Methodist pastor in Oregon. By the way, she will be here to preach on the last step, releasing the outcome, on October 15th. And for years, Jenny struggled with panic attacks. And in her own words and with her permission, she shares her struggle about showing up to her life. She writes, I had a season in my life where anxiety was a force to be reckoned with. There were several triggers, and feelings of dread and fear were real. I later learned our brains are a powerful thing when it comes to how we see reality. Our thoughts are not facts. I hope you heard that. Our thoughts are not facts. When those moments came, I would cancel commitments and hole up at home. I felt overwhelmed and disconnected. I was not showing up to my life. It was passing me by. Now, I've learned and grown a great deal since then, and I can now say I'm thankful for that season of my life because it was a catalyst for some great things to come, but it was a painful time. Are you showing up to your life right now? Or is it knocking you over so fast that you can hardly catch your breath between the waves? Maybe it feels a lot easier to check out and just try to get through it. Maybe this is why people medicate themselves with alcohol or drugs or sex or materialism. Life can be overwhelming and we just want to hide. Last year, when my 33-year-old son died unexpectedly in Anchorage, our family had a choice. We could show up to the pain, or we could deny it. The problem was that showing up to the pain of his loss in our lives also meant that we had to show up to the ways that our family was not so healthy. It meant that I needed to show up to the ways that I had worked out my childhood pain on them. I did this with my impatience, my anger, my moodiness. Now, the result of having shown up to all of this difficult stuff has been healing. I would even call it resurrection. All of us as a family are seeing new selves as we seek counseling and prayer and meditation and medication. It's happening. Healing is happening in our family. Now, we know that organizations have mission statements, right? And you know the mission of our church, right? To what? Seek justice. Second, love kindness. And third, walk humbly with God. Have you ever thought of having a personal mission statement? I have one. I've had one for probably about 40 years now. My personal mission statement is to be in my life situation as it really is, with myself as I really am, with God as God really is. Now, I can tell you that that statement has helped to guide me over the years and helped me when I didn't want to show up to my life. It's helped me show up to some difficult experiences. So what are those life experiences that tempt you to run and hide? It's exactly at such moments when life can overwhelm that we have a choice. We can engage in behaviors that numb our pain, or we can say yes to God's invitation to show up to the reality of our lives. Of course, God desires that we bring our whole selves to whatever situation we're going through, no matter how hard it is. It takes intentional effort, but as you'll see in the next several weeks, your decision to show up to your life can be incredibly profound. Now, I suspect that we have all had one of those days like the woman in the story that I'm going to share with you. This is like the adult version of a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day. And it began with this woman feeling the pressure of a writing deadline. She had company arriving in a couple of days and the toilet was clogged. She went to the bank and the trainee teller processing her deposit had to start over 3 times. She swung by the store to pick up a few things and the lines were super long. By the time she got home, she was frazzled and sweaty and in a hurry to get something on the table for dinner. She decided on leftover baked beans, grabbed a Tupperware from the fridge, popped the seal, and took a look, and there was mold everywhere. Really frustrated now, she decided on a menu that promised to be as foolproof as nutrition-free, hot dogs and potato chips. And retrieving a brand new bag of potato chips from the cupboard, she grabbed the cellophane and gave it a hearty pull, and the bag didn't open. She tried again, nothing happened. She took a breath, and with all her strength, she opened it, and with a loud pop, the cellophane gave way, and ripping the potato chips from top to bottom, and chips flew everywhere, leaving this poor woman holding an empty bag. It was the final straw, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. "I can't take it anymore!" Well, her husband heard the commotion, arrived to survey the damage. Melting groceries, moldy baked beans, a quivering wife standing in potato chips. And he did the most helpful thing that he could think of at the moment. He took a flying leap and landed in the middle of those pile of chips, and then he began to stomp and dance and twirl and grinding those chips into the floor in the process. And the frazzled wife stared and fumed. Pretty soon she was working to stifle a smile. And eventually she had to laugh. And finally, she decided to join him by jumping onto the chips, and together they danced on potato chips. What is keeping you from showing up to your life? And how do you show up when life becomes chaotic and stressful? How do you show up when you find out that you've got cancer? How do you show up when a loved one has died and grief leaves a gaping hole in your heart? The reason we don't show up usually involves some sort of fear. We're afraid of change. We're afraid of losing our health. We are afraid of losing control. And sometimes we don't show up to our lives because life is going too good. So good, in fact, that we feel a future fear that has not even happened. This past fall, this fall, families of children have returned to school, right? Do you remember how you felt on your first day of school? You've got your school supplies, new clothes are laid out for the night before. It's a new start. You want to be ready. Now, most people don't like showing up feeling unprepared. But I've got some good news for you of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that God doesn't need us to be ready. God just needs us to be willing. Sometimes God asks us to take all the things that we think we have to do to prepare and set them aside. Your backpack doesn't need everything in it you think it does. It's okay to show up to God, to show up to your life with an empty backpack. Actor Hugh Laurie said, "It's a terrible thing in life to wait until you're ready." I actually feel that no one is ever ready to do anything. There is almost no such thing as ready. There is only now. So if you don't feel ready for what's coming next in life, you're not alone. I think most people aren't really ready to show up. They just do it anyway. The Bible is filled with person after person who did not feel ready. Think about all of the folks who, were shocked when God asked them to do something. But God didn't ask them whether they felt ready. God decided they were ready, and God called them to do what God wanted them to do. And those we now call the heroes of the faith are the ones who obeyed God's call even when they did not feel ready. Psalm 130 is a plea for God to show up. I cry out to you, God. Listen to my voice. Let your ears pay close attention. My whole being hopes and waits. If you boil down most of our prayers, isn't this what we want from God? We long for God to show up, to be present of what it is that we're going through. It's what we whisper beside the hospital bed of a loved one. Show up, God. As we watch our kindergartner walk into the classroom on a first day of school, our hearts shout out, show up, God, bless this child. We watch our teenagers learn to drive, go on dates, graduate, and we cry out, show up, God. We struggle with our relationships with others, and we cry out, Lord, show up. The whole Bible is a story of God showing up to us. We sometimes show up, we sometimes often forget, and then we leave, and then we try again. But God is always showing up for us, for the Israelites, for King David, for the prophets, the disciples, the first communities. It's the incarnation. God shows up in the best way imaginable as Jesus to show us a beautiful way to live and to love. God doesn't need us to be ready, just willing. A young mother was struggling with her faith, whether or not she wanted to be baptized. She wrote the pastor this note. I prayed for a desire to know the Word of God so I may learn what it is I really need to do to follow Christ. And in my searching, I've come to realize it's very much a journey. And that baptism is not something I have to wait to do until I'm finished learning. So I'm ready to dedicate my life to learning the Bible, being a follower of Christ as best as I can, and continue to grow. Next Sunday is World Communion Sunday. And we do not have to be ready in any other way other than being hungry and thirsty for love. We may come with overwhelmed lives. We may come with stress over many things. We may come to the table of God's love with brokenness and sin. And in this encounter, Jesus shows up for us. And so as we are given strength to continue our journey of life and faith and love, thanks be to God. Amen.